yes and no yawning zone up there.
Oh, I have. It's still suffering from that 10 o'clock stuff.
I hear you.
I'll recover by next week.
Yeah, good. Oh, seriously. I'll tell you something in a couple minutes.
Come on, Dick. You can do it. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation by Deacon Pete Shoemaker. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we love you and praise you, first and foremost in all that we do, and we seek you first in all important matters. We ask your blessing on the labor that will be done in this conclave tonight. May it be productive. May it lift you up in glory, Lord. Father, there's much we need to pray about, and we lift up to you, especially the safety of all those who work in Gloucester Township, especially the police, the fire, first responders of every kind, and all those who work with the public at large. Heavenly Father, keep us safe, we pray, especially from the diseases that float around this earth, and also protect all in our community, Lord, and all the healthcare workers that keep us healthy. Thank you, Lord, for the privilege to serve you this day in this wonderful county of Gloucester Township. And we pray this in your precious name, and we all say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Deacon. This regular meeting of the Township Council is being held in accordance with the schedule of meetings of the Township Council, established and adopted by the Township Council, which schedule designated the time, date, and place of this meeting. Adequate public notice of this meeting has been provided pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. We are using an electronic amplifying and recording device, and in order to obtain an audible and clear record, we request that all those wishing to speak be recognized and state your name and address directly into the microphone. The recording device is to be solely utilized by the Township Clerk's Office for the preparation of the minutes and shall be the official record of the Township Council meetings. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Present.
Mr. Owens?
Present.
Mrs. Stubbs? Present. Mrs. Winters? Here. Mr. Mignon?
Here.
Mrs. Trotta?
Here.
Mr. Mercado?
He is out sick.
Mr. Carlemere?
Here.
Mr. Cardis?
Here.
Mr. Lechner?
Here.
Chief Harkins?
Here.
Mr. Chadwell?
Here.
Thank you. We will now have the first public portion. This shall be for agenda items only. We will hold to the 15 minutes total, 3 minutes for each speaker. First, we have, should I do the proclamation first? All right, go ahead. We have a proclamation first.
2020 You Drive, You Text, You Pay Distracted Driving Crackdown, April 1st through April 21st, 2020. Whereas distracted driving is a serious life-threatening practice that is preventable. And whereas distracted driving can result in injuries and deaths to all road users, motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists. And whereas distracted driving occurs when drivers divert their attention away from the task of driving to focus on another activity instead. And whereas in 2017 alone, distracted driving-related crashes resulted in 3,116 deaths and 391,000 injuries on our nation's roads. And whereas in New Jersey, distracted driving was listed as a contributing circumstance in 51% of all motor vehicle crashes in 2017. And whereas the state of New Jersey will participate in the National Distracted Driving 2020 crackdown from April 1st to the 21st of 2020 in an effort to raise awareness and decrease driver distraction. through a combination of enforcement and education. And whereas the national slogan for the campaign is "You drive, you text, you pay." And whereas a reduction in distracted driving in New Jersey will save lives on our roadways. Therefore, be it resolved, David R. Mayor, Mayor of the Township of Gloucester, and Orlando Mercado, Council President, do hereby proclaim the Township of Gloucester's support for the distracted driving 2020 crackdown, both locally and nationally, from April 1st to the 21st of 2020, and pledge to increase awareness of dangers of distracted driving.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll return to the first public portion. Anyone? Pete?
Good evening, Pete Heinball, Morningstar Court. My agenda question, 2 questions tonight. One's on resolution number 74. We're adjusting some project amounts for a capital project. But my question related to that project is, this is a 2017 project that we're now spending the money on to do the road work. When was that 2017 project money borrowed?
Tom, can you give us an update, please?
Well, it would have been issued by a note, and it would have been part of the last year's $34 million permanent funding, the general obligation bond. So it started as a note.
So it started as a note in 2017.
Correct.
Right.
And all those notes were then combined into a general obligation issuance.
So in essence, we borrowed the money for this project 3 years ago, and we're spending it now.
You borrow the money each year that you have a capital.
Do we-
They have a choice of either permanently financing or doing a 1-year note.
There's no way to do that any better? I mean, this is money we borrowed, the township borrowed and went into debt, incurred interest for it 3 years ago. And now we're spending the money 3 years later. There's no way to do that any better?
No, there isn't, because the project was planned. I can't tell you, Anthony might be able to tell you why we're just getting the project finished now.
Well, I'm not arguing with the,
Change order, but no.
I'm not arguing with how long it took for the project. That's fine. I'm not even addressing that. I'm arguing the time difference between when the money was borrowed and the debt was incurred, and 3 years later when the money was
Money's
spent.
only borrowed for a 1-year period. It's borrowed on a note. You roll that note over. You can reduce that note by whatever you don't need. At some point in time, because of economies of scale, because you would not want to permanently finance each year. Can I finish, please? You wait until a point in time, and then you combine each year's notes into one bond issuance. And we did that last year, as you're aware.
Yes, and I'm not asking about that. That was good decisions to do notes and then consolidate into a permanent bond. That was a good decision in my opinion. My question is still that we can't do better as a borrowing practice, as a borrowing procedure, to borrow money and incur debt, incur interest 3 years ago.
You're talking about like better, like there's a problem with how
Yeah.
we borrow. We borrow in a prescribed manner by the state of New Jersey.
So Trenton's making you borrow 3 years early.
As you know,
I think
under
there's-
local bond
I think
law,
there's
all you
ways.
have to do is look and read local bond law. You will see that we do it exactly the way it's supposed to be done. We pass an ordinance. That ordinance then enables me to go to the financial markets. We get quotes for the notes. They're 1-year notes. We either roll them over or we put them into
Yeah.
a permanent financing.
And you're being mandated to borrow the 100% of that bond ordinance right away, even if you know some of it's not going to be spent for 2 or 3 years. You know, it happens. I mean, it's common. It's the way it's done.
You borrow the money as it's needed.
Yes, you're not. It was
Borrow
needed.
as it's needed.
You did, but that's not what you did. That's exactly the opposite of what you did. You borrowed it 3 years ago. You didn't need it till today.
You're painting something that you're saying is wrong, and it's not wrong. It's correct. And I disagree with you respectfully.
Can I just, Pete, man?
Yes.
I think what Pete's trying to say is, are we borrowing to do a home improvement, let's say today, but we're not going to do the home improvement, I'm going to extrapolate that for 5 years. Do we have to borrow, if we know we're not going to get it done for 5 years, or we're not going to start it for 3 years, we have to borrow it on day one? I think that's what he's saying. Is that what
And
you're
I
saying,
don't
Pete?
know when we borrowed the money for this particular project. It may not have been for a year or so after the bond ordinance was approved.
I think that's his problem.
My CFO borrows money based on the need to borrow the money. And also that she takes into account other factors. What are interest rates at? Is it better to go short-term versus long-term? The short-term one-year bond note market has been tremendous. It's been at rates of 1.3, 1.4. So,
The real problem, Tom, might be if the rates aren't good and we still do what Pete's afraid we're doing, it could be really bad. With a 1% interest rate, maybe doesn't look that. I think,
that's
am I
what.
speaking over you, Pete? I don't know.
You're pretty close. I mean, I just don't get that. Your first example, just your just hypothetical example of a home improvement is exactly what I'm talking about. If you need knew you need a refrigerator next year, you wouldn't charge it on a credit card today. You would wait till you needed it. That's what I'm saying.
And that's our practice. We don't, if you're asking me if the moment the bond ordinance goes into effect, which it has an introduction, a public hearing, and a 20-day estoppel period. If you're asking me if we run to the bank and borrow $1 million note on that date, we don't. We
Close,
borrow
a
the
couple
money
months.
as we
I've
need.
seen the transactions over the last 6 years, these bond anticipation notes. And it's pretty close to that. You borrow the full bond ordinance amount on a bond last 6 years.
That's not telling you when we're issuing the note. You don't see that when we're issuing the note. The note is issued, the authorization through the bond anticipation note or through the bond ordinance is given for us to do it at any point in time. Council say, we approve, it's okay, we had a public hearing on it, you can go to the markets whenever you want.
So on resolution 74, when did we, that to
I don't
2017
know. I would
project?
have to check with the CFO to see when she went and took a note out.
Tom, could I go? For the 74 that you're talking about, that was a 2017 road improvement program, just the mill and overlay portion. We actually broke that road program into two separate portions, the full depth reconstruction and the mill and overlay. Full depth reconstruction, and we borrowed for both of them at the same time, used substantially most of it, closed out the half that was completed, and for some reason, Aeroac drug their feet. The contractor didn't finish the project for 2 years, but they substantially used, I want to say, like 90% of the money. Most of the project was done. They already billed for most of that. And then there's some punch list items, some very minor things in order to get this final change order approved. So,
But this kind of thing is the rule rather than the exception, where we're borrowing money on day one, as Dan mentioned, and different things happen until we get the project going, it's split into two, whatever. But we're still borrowing the money on day one, way ahead of when the check is actually cut to the vendor. Way ahead. In
Agreed.
some cases, 2 years, 3 years.
Different things are going to be ordered and take different amounts of time to get them. A pickup truck
Right.
might be able to get right away. A recycling truck could take you a year and a half.
I'm not debating
What
any of that.
what we're not doing is we're not going to go and break the entire capital project up into 25 or 30 notes.
So
That's
it's-
not how we do it.
Over borrowing, and that's the intent then. To borrow early, over borrow. We're doing that intentionally then. We know we're not going to spend it.
We issue one big note. That's what we do when we need the money.
You don't need it. You keep saying need. Need in the real world is when you cut the check.
Listen,
When you cut the check to,
money in the capital account. Then
That's
she's
not
not
needing
going to
it.
come to me and say that we need to go float a note. We're not going to do it. We don't need it. When the time comes that the capital
We're talking
monies
over
are
each other.
depleted to a level that we need to have money in there, that's when we go and float a note or permanently finance.
we're talking over each other.
Apparently, this is not an example that would. be
Well, it
concerning.
sort of is. It's one of, I could probably come up with 100
Well,
examples
it-
over the
it-
years.
Excuse me, in the interest of time,
Yes,
we're
yes.
over the 3 minutes.
Thank you.
I think Tony did answer the question regarding this
Yes, he did.
particular project. Thank you. Anybody else?
Is now the time to talk, or just the agenda?
Just
Do we
the
have
agenda,
to
right.
Wait till the end?
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
thank you.
Ray?
Good evening, Council. Ray Poldor from the historic village of Ariel. Tom, you often refer to Trenton. This is what Trenton sets forth. Has any of the things that you responded by way of Trenton a mandate or a guideline?
For the guidelines.
So even though Trenton says you can do it this way, it doesn't mean that you, the representative of the administration, has to do that, right?
They're strict guidelines. They're law. It's New Jersey statutes annotated.
Right.
It has local budget law in there. It has local bonding law in there. Mr. Corlemere could probably comment on it too, but it's the law, and we're following the law, the way the law prescribes that you issue debt and the way it's done.
And again, with that, as Pete was saying, with the difference between notes and bonds, again, when you refer to Trenton, New Jersey is not in the top 30 of well-run states. To seek their advice and follow their guidelines, I don't know is in Gloucester Township's best interest. I think that if you, and I happen to think enough of you that you're probably more talented than almost anyone in Trenton. You know Gloucester Township better than they do. I'm wondering if it would behoove this township and the taxpayers for you to use your judgment rather than Trenton's, which is a very poor example.
Well, hopefully part of that talent is the ability to follow the law, and that's what I do.
Well, you're saying law, and I just asked you if it was mandated or guidelines.
It's law. It's law.
So you're being told that you need to borrow that, you have to borrow that
You
money.
can't go outside those guidelines. There are even schedules in there for different things you would buy as to the useful life. And the state spells out what the useful life is for a street, or for a four-wheel drive vehicle, or for a dump truck, or for everything is spelled out in there. And that's why in the beginning of the year, you see that we hire a bonding attorney.
I mean, places like Cumberland County, Salem County, Atlantic County, they don't have the taxes that we do. They don't have the debt that we do. I'm just wondering if it's.
That's pretty.
I have a pretty good idea. I have my in-laws
I
live in.
facts on that. I mean, we're at 1.54% of the entire debt that we could issue, up to I believe it's 3.5% of the average of the last three equalized valuations. 1.545 is low, I will tell you, in comparison to what some other municipalities.
Tell the taxpayers whose property tax keeps going up how low that
Sit
is.
down and see it, I'll show it.
And I'd be happy to do
It's
so.
online too. All the documents are online. The annual debt statement's online. The annual financial statement's online. The audits are online.
Well, it's just best that sometimes that when you got a wad of cash in your pocket,
You're
not to
making
swipe the
broad
card.
statements that you're not presenting evidence.
Well, listen, I'm not an accountant and I don't play one on television, but I know that my taxes go up every other year. I know that we spend. I know that we tax. I know that we borrow. It just, New Jersey's not a shining example of a well-run state.
And so do other counties, and so do other
All right,
municipalities.
and in the interest of time also on the agenda is the second public portion. I ask the council president, along with council, consider waiving the total time limit so that the many people that have appeared here tonight, everyone has an opportunity to speak on whatever it is issue they're here for and are passionate about. Would you consider waiving the total time limit for the folks?
We'll take that into consideration as the night goes on.
Okay, you'll let us know when you're getting down to the last three so that those people that want to get the urgent questions in and statements can do so. Thank you.
Sam?
Evening, Council. Sam Sweet from Ariel. I'm going to apologize in advance if this isn't, since it morphed into this, I guess it's not on the agenda, but it's directed at Mr. Cardis with the borrowing of the bond anticipatory notes or the capital budgets, because this time of year, I can wait till the second public portion.
If you don't mind,
Okay, I wasn't sure because it just morphed into it, so I can wait till,
please.
that's fine.
Thank you,
Okay.
Sam. Anybody else on agenda items only? All right, seeing no more hands, we'll close the first public portion. Do you want me to read that part since she's? Yeah. All right, waive the reading and accept the minutes, executive session, February 3rd, 2020. Do I do the vote or can I do it all at once? Okay.
Regular sessions.
Regular session, February 10th, 2020, and February 24th, 2020. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes? Do I have a second?
A second.
Roll call? Okay. Change hats. Mr. Hutchinson?
I will abstain from the executive session on February the 3rd, and I will vote yes to the regular session on February 10th and February 24th.
Thank you. Mr. Owens?
Yes on the executive session February 3rd, yes on regular session February 10th, and abstain on regular session February 24th.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes, for February 3rd, yes, for February 10th, and I abstain from February 24th.
We got up through Mrs. Stubbs.
Thank you. Mrs. Winters?
Yes to all.
Mr. Minio?
Yes to all.
Mrs. Trotta?
Yes to all. Okay, resolution of consent agenda. Any council person wishing to make a change, please let me know. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
On resolution 65, I have to abstain on PO 2001160, invoice 4179615, 4179619, 4179612, 4180080. Yes to everything else in that resolution as well as all the others.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters?
Yes.
Mr. Minio?
Yes.
Mrs. Trotta?
Yes. We have no GTE Gov questions this evening. We will now open the second public portion. Please be mindful, we are going to 30 minutes, 5 minutes for each speaker. If it still seems that we need more time, we'll reevaluate it at that point. So, ma'am, you asked, now's the time that you can.
Hello, long time no see for many of you. My name is Candy Ruggieri. I am a resident at 14 Leanne Drive. We are here to talk to the council about the issuance of a pending F-class license under cooperative sober living. So I'll recap a little bit for those that don't know, but this state, actually I have some questions for you. So it's my understanding in talking to the state that the proposed rule proposals for this, and I'm quickly learning legislation, but I do employee benefits by the day. There was two rule proposals that were posted under the New Jersey legislator. So our first question is, who in the township looks at these rule proposals? Because the one message, and there was another person that was part of it was very, very unusual that there was no response from many of the townships. So we have with us today the two rule proposals, copies of the citation. The first one was 49 NJR 1275A. And in reading through this one had to do with crane construction. On the same day, there was a citation that was 1276A from the Division of Community Affairs that had to do with cooperative sober living residents. We have the rule adoptions that were on January 16th of 2018, and I'll submit them for public record. It's just interesting that there's not one response from the township regarding the impact of a cooperative sober living in our residents. And we would like to know why. We would like to know, in today's legal environment, maybe you didn't see it, maybe it was not posted, but we are going to bring this up to the Department of Community Affairs because in two incidents, two individuals at a very high level had indicated that it was very much a coincidence. So at the next council meeting, if that's the way, learning how all of this goes, we would like to have a response. The other thing that we wanted to talk about is that the Camden County had put out the opioid crisis. And in reading through this on page 11, and I'll submit this for public record, But to go through and read this, I guess we're a little perplexed that no one says they know about it. But let me read through that. The county, Camden County, feels that these are great programs and that there is funding for cooperative sober living residences in our neighborhood. We'd like to know what that funding is. We'd like to know how that funding comes back to us. It's our understanding, and this is very general, but we have a program in Gloucester Township, which is wonderful. I read through, I've seen the mayor win an award in June of 2018 for the drug rehabilitation that we're doing. My suspicions, and they're truly just suspicions, but that we are feeding a company and providing them a lot of business, which is a good thing. Addiction impacts everybody in recovery. But we're giving them business. They're running all of this stuff through their insurance companies, and now these homes are being put on our street. And this specific street for us is 15 Land Drive, but this does not just impact our community. We have other residents of the community right behind us that got word of this. So this is spreading amongst the community. But we'd like to know the funding, and we would like to know about this program and what everyone knew about. It's funding, I read through, I tried all, but it's funding that the state is giving to the county. So we're not sure if that money is going to the cooperative sober living, and not to get into the tax, but we do pay high taxes, and now there's funding for these homes, in which we'll talk about at another council meeting, but that's gone through. That, there's funding, and we're getting a cutback. I also want to talk about the National Alliance for Recovery Residences. And although the regs indicate that you don't have to mandate what these cooperative sober livings do, this is a program that we should be talking to every cooperative sober living resident. What this does is this goes into the home and makes sure that those individuals are protected, and then it actually brings back a little bit to the community. But we're still fighting this. So I do want to bring on the next person of our community. And Bob, is that going to be Joe or Bob? So I'm Joe Riqueza. So we're going to be respectful of your 3 minutes, but our one request is ongoing. You will be seeing us at every council meeting. And a question that I have maybe for Ken is that, Ken, do we need to be coming to the zoning board meetings? Because this F-class license expires in February in 2022. And if we don't do anything about this, they're going to move right next door to you. And that's fine. But then you may be on the other side of this table understanding what the impact is going to be to your children and to your community as well. Jeff?
I was just going to say, I think we need to address your questions first.
I can comment as if on the Camden County report on the opioid, the funding I'm aware of, if it is in fact, I don't have it in front of me, but the county is funding these. As you know, we started the SAVE program in Gloucester Township. Camden County mirrored it, thought it was successful. And what that does is puts a drug counselor in our municipal court. The county courts at Superior Court level always had drug courts, but those were serious charges. So they mirrored our program. We advocated to go county-wide. My understanding is the Camden County Addiction Task Force was able to secure funding from the state, which would pay for a drug counselor in every municipal court to any town that wanted to take it on. And that there was an RFP that was granted through Genesis Counseling Services. And that's who we have always, they did our RFP, correct, Tom? They did a request for proposal. And so that may be, I just wanted to let you know, that may be some of the funds that I know it is in the report as a successful program that they did obtain from the state. And that went to Genesis Counseling Service to pay for a counselor to go in every municipal court. And we have expanded services. In addition, we do receive that funding in Gloucester Township. They do cover the costs of our court advocate, but we have expanded programs in addition.
So can I ask a question regarding the court advocate? So can I say who I think her name is? Is her first name Stephanie? Is that the new
That's
person?
one of them. Yeah,
Stephanie?
she's-
So who are we referring in the court advocate for
She
someone?
has a whole list of different, depending on the person's issue, and depending on, she has a daily list of open beds. She is not only sending to Genesis, that's part of the RFP. She for the number of beds, whether the person needs detoxification services. It depends on the person that she has in front of her.
And is that recorded? Is there a record as to where, do we track where we're sending
It is tracked by.
and the
I'm
recovery?
not sure it's a public record. I would have to check.
Okay.
We do have records of where it goes, but I can't.
Do I have 2 more minutes? A minute. So again, we're learning about this, but when you talk about individuals in recovery, and I'm not picking specifically, I'm not picking specifically on any program, but there are differences for individuals that have private insurance. The private insurance get to go to others, not Medicaid type programs. So Victory Bay is one of those private ones. And we're focusing on Victory Bay because it's through that the Dignity Hall is a referral for that company. We're a little concerned about who goes into those homes. Someone with a bench warrant should not be coming into our community, into our house. And I'm probably expanding a little bit more. So team, sorry about this, but we're coming to learn about when you read a cooperative sober living and what they call drug testing versus what true drug testing is. So there's a big difference if you tell me today that you want me to drug test and I get a home kit and you test that, I go to the bathroom and you test that home kit versus someone that's in drug probate with the court when they are tested at a lab level. So when you read through and you want to, if you're, once we get to the point and we talk about safe living, these are two different things. Some of this legislation indicates that a MAT program is going to come into play. So as we talk about the zoning, we think it's a medical treatment facility. Some people say that it's not, but part of the future legislation is that these cooperative sober living is going to be a medical addiction treatment program, meaning that they are going to have narcotics, they're going to have drugs on the facility in our neighborhood. So that's in the Camden County report. And if that's it, that changes everything. And we can't wait till 2022 for this to happen.
Madam President,
Yes, please.
So I can't speak at all to the sober living issues. I can say that anyone that's being referred by our safe advocate in municipal court would not have a bench warrant. I have no idea about the screening by other agencies and whatnot, or through anything that comes through the safe advocate through municipal court would not have bench warrant in effect at that time. If they did, we can't just ignore that. It's an additional process that they would go through. So I just wanted to make that clear. I can't speak to the other issues that you're referring to, but I would assure council that anyone that is going through from the safe advocate would not have an active arrest warrant.
Next, we're going to bring up Bob Ray. He's attended our last meeting. So the reason that Bob is here is that there's a lot of information about ADA protection and all of that. And we've been doing lots of researches on site. If you come by our house at 3 a.m., our lights are on because we're reading through all this stuff. But Bob wants to talk to you about that because that is something that with every conversation, it's like, oh, they're protected by the ADA. And so we want to clarify we want to clarify the definition of ADA.
Candy, it's Candy, right?
Yes, it's Candy.
Right, Ms. Brown. Your first question,
Mhm.
Can you restate that first question?
So the first question had to do with on June 5th, when the Department of, it was the Community Affairs Division of Codes and Standards put out an administrative code citation, and it was 1276A. And that citation was from Charles Richmond, and it indicated that your written comments were due by August 4th, 2017. And Bernard Raywood, when I spoke to him, and he is the supervising enforcement agency of the I'll give you, of the Department of Community Affairs, he commented that it's very unusual, like these citations were put out and no township responded to them.
No town in the entire state responded to these.
Find that very unusual. And this was Christie's going away present to us, so I don't know.
She is correct, because I also, as you know, reached out to Mr. Raywood and had a long conversation. He was very informative to my office, and I'm sure the conversations might have been reached out through the mayor or the clerk's office. But we did speak for a while, and the comment is correct, that when the rule notification citations were put out and were requesting comments from the municipalities throughout the state of New Jersey, and I don't really mean to be critical of how the transparency was handled, but not one town, community, 560-some municipalities, not one responded to that rules and procedures that they were putting out. So they just moved on quickly. So that just leaves the question of the method of transparency. And I don't mean that to be critical, but you have the legal municipalities that keeps municipalities informed of what's going on. You have advance sheets that go out to municipal attorneys, municipal clerks, and prosecutors' offices. They send all these things out to keep everybody informed of what's coming through the various agencies in the DCA to the towns and professionals that represent, engineers or anyone who receives those information. So it just became suspect to me as to what method of transparency was really. I've had conversations with the borough of Somerdale. We've had conversations with Medford. We're getting a lot of information from Medford. There is a procedure that we're starting to go through as far as initiating our own ordinances to control. Unfortunately, the circumstances that are here today, you cannot do too much about. Medford went through the same thing. Their sober facility was put into a business district, so they forced them to go through a use variance. But I didn't read their comments, but they felt that they had to approve it, so it got approved through a use variance into a business zone. Now they're trying to regulate it for the future. So a lot of the towns are starting to respond now because the information is out and the events are happening. So they want to put rules and regulations in effect by local ordinances for the future. But everyone says to me, it's amazing that not one town responded to either of the notices that they put out.
So, Dave, you just said something. I want to be clear on that. I spoke with the mayor today, and the mayor has indicated that we have a law firm engaged right now that's looking at all legal recourse that we possibly can explore. So I don't believe, Dave, you're suggesting in your last comment that you're of the opinion at this very second you know that there's nothing we can do at this point in time. I spoke to the mayor an hour or two before I got here. So, you know, it's the Archer firm from Haddonfield. They're looking into it. Whatever we can do, we're going to try and do.
My office has had conversations with that.
And I don't know, I tried to call, I think they have caller ID and they said it's that crazy lady Candy calling again. But I was calling because I want to question the legality and the suspicion of this, and reading through the regulations, we're not sure, but we think minimally until, and someone, you know, Ray said, well, you're going to call these municipalities. Oh yeah. We started calling them already, but I don't know, understand the law, but that is the question tomorrow that we pose to the state, at least from a township, that we can find the right homes for these individuals. And I've been driving around Gloucester Township, you know, over the weekend. And I was like, that would be a great place. And that would be a great place. And there are parts of our community that need assistance with resident, you know, homes that are vacant. And so I don't know why we can't get involved, why we cannot talk to these owners and operators to find a beneficial place to help recovering addicts, which is important. It could be my son, could be my daughter, you know, but it would be in the best interest of everybody and to educate the community on this.
Thank you, Candy. Oh, go ahead.
One more thing. When I spoke to the mayor earlier today, he indicated that the distance, we had that measured, I think, Tony, were you involved in that today? What was the distance that you measured from the school to the homes on Leanne Drive?
Property corner lot to property corner lot was just over 900 feet or
Just over
1.17 miles.
Okay. You know, that he, and we're looking at potentially doing some type of ordinances, don't know what effect the passing of an ordinance today would have retroactively. That's beyond where I am right now. But we are looking at anything and everything we can do.
Did you want to give the paperwork you mentioned?
Mhm. Do I hand that?
Thanks, Chief.
This is in our program that we think that we should be requiring, we should highly suggest every property safer living to have that for the existing ones. And then there's one additional citation.
Dave, as Candy's giving that documentation up, what can we do going forward? Because Candy's first question, I don't think I've addressed, which is, we didn't publicly comment. We didn't send a comment. And I suspect that we rely upon the League of Municipalities to basically alert us to things. I don't know if that's the case.
There are various methods that transparent messages that get out to the various municipalities. League of Municipalities is one source, but then there are also pamphlets that go out to municipal attorneys, I'm sure, because I've seen them, on legislation or rules that are coming out of various agencies. Pending legislation, we always get those through advance sheets. I'm sure engineering and code enforcement or tax assessors, they get the same old information as to what's coming out.
Can we possibly address, and I'll bring it up to Council President at the next workshop, what steps we can take to provide us with additional assurances that when these types of regulations are being proposed, that we don't miss them? Because I can tell you right now, this is one that no town, none of the 566 municipalities should have failed to comment.
You bring up a good point. I was
Thanks,
thinking New
Dan.
Jersey League of Municipalities. They should have picked up on this.
Yeah.
and board it.
I'm incredibly disappointed that this town did not publicly comment.
Is there any, besides going to the Department of Community Affairs, do you have a recommendation? Who else besides the council do we elevate I'm happy to call these other departments or divisions to question it. I mean, we need to know.
Dave, do you have any additional information for them?
As far as a contact person, no. I mean, I had a good conversation with Mr. Raywood. We were on the phone for quite a while, giving me whatever information, I guess, in whatever format he could. And the door is open for continued communication. And we're reaching out to other towns. We talked about Atlantic City. We talked about Medford. And Medford's been very responsive to my office as far as the information they're providing and copies that they're going to provide us as to what avenue they're taking for the future.
And Bloomfield as well. They've reached out to me. That would be another county to talk to.
Which town was that?
Bloomfield.
Okay.
They have the Hazel. It's the Hazel House, and they're in a similar situation that we are. So thank you for the time, Bob.
Candy. Thanks, Dan, for that information. And Dave, thank you.
If I may please correct one thing that Candy said. She called herself that crazy lady, Candy, and I want to say she's anything but. You can tell. My name is Bob Perret, and I do want to tell you where I live, but first I want to preface with, my home is my castle, and that's not new. That's not new to the American way. That's not new to any of us. My castle is at 20 Leanne Drive. I'm having flashbacks because of the way that this was handled. Actually, the flashbacks, and with all due respect to all the victims of 9/11, but the point is that that was an attack. And it was an attack that nobody knew was coming. And that was an attack that left a gut feeling that's never, never gone away. I think for all of us. Being informed the way we were informed, that the house directly across from my front door, it's not a wide street, is suddenly going to exist as a sober living home. And the first reaction of a couple neighbors was to call, like, why, who? Call the owner, whatever. And for the response to be, it's done. Too bad. There's nothing you can do about it. That's the response. Again, all due respect to 9/11 victims, but you know why we're here. This is the gut that we are working with. And I believe it was you said, this should never happen to anyone. No public hearing. We stumbled, literally stumbled into that this was occurring. Supposedly within the next 2 to 3 weeks is when the license may be granted. So for us to come up to speed now, and we don't have lawyers among us, none of us are. We're doing homework, crazy lady and everybody. There's been a lot of us involved in a lot of different ways, but I did want you to know about that. Your home is your castle as well. It's draconian to be given this information the way we were given it. It's Machiavellian. It's horrible. So you are going to hear from us again and again and again. And right now, we don't have time on our side. We are told that within 2 to 3 weeks, there will be a decision on a license. What? Now, at a minimum, we'd love to ask, can we have more time? Somehow? To respond here? I digress. I was supposed to talk about the ADA, and I want to very briefly say that much of the response we get is a hand. It's literally a hand, like a policeman stopping a car, saying it's a protected class. Very, very true. People with disabilities are a protected class. They are. And that's all I've done for the last 40 years as a licensed rehab counselor in New Jersey, is protecting these individuals personally and as a group. And by now, if anyone mentions to me in this context of this discussion about a protected class, I'm not sure how I'm going to answer anymore. Companies are not protected. And we are talking about a company. No matter how you dice it, they're not protected. I don't even think legislation, again, I'm not a lawyer, I don't even think legislation is protected by a protected class. Certainly not in the ADA. So number one, I'd like to take that argument off the table once and for all. It doesn't belong on the table. Secondly, if this home, which is identical to mine, well, I combined 2 bedrooms, they didn't, but it's identical. We have the same architect drawing on all 28 houses, essentially. And I haven't been inside, but from what I can tell, this home is not equipped to take care of or welcome or have persons with disabilities. So you want it on one end. I don't mean you. I mean the situation wants it on one end. They're protected. And yet someone with a wheelchair cannot go into that home. Which one is it? It's not at all equipped. There are many types of disabilities. We all understand that. But you can have someone in a wheelchair who also has an addiction issue. And they're going to be told, can't come here. We can't provide for your safety. Not even a ramp, which some of our neighbors have just because some of us are elderly and it happens. Not even that. Nothing.
Excellent point.
There's something, I've said this before. It looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it walks like a duck, and I'm going to call it a duck. There's something wrong here. And it's railroading through. And I'm asking you, because you are the elected officials, you're the people involved in our township, and it's not really only for Leanne Drive. Most probably all of us are in the R3, and that's the cluster. So you have also less than 3 weeks.
Bob, it's an offense against home ownership. That's the way I look at it. It's not just Leanne Drive. You're being negatively affected immediately, but they're taking something from those who want their castle. Okay, I get it. I take a drive down I've driven down virtually every single day since you guys brought it to our attention last week. I heard the gentleman with the blue convertible. I looked at it. I feel bad for you guys. I'm telling you right now, that's why we are proceeding as quickly as we can.
Thank you. The points that I want to bring about is a zoning issue. We can tell you stories about we heard this other place and we heard. We can give you those. That's not the big issue here. To me, it is one of respecting zoning. Now, I don't know if zoning is an ordinance or a law or whatever, but it is the way people act. You cannot put a daycare for all little kids who have handicaps. Let's say you want to open that and they all have disabilities, and a preschool because education is covered under the protected class. You can't put that on Leanne Drive because we're not zoned for it. Why are we zoned for a sober living home? There's just no sense to me. You can't have a business on Leanne Drive, Midas Muffler or anything else. This is a business. You can't have a group home or institution. I can't, whether under a corporate name or my own name, bring in 10 elderly people to live in my house. We're not zoned for it. And yet we're being told, R3, you are for this. It makes no sense. There's a place that common sense, common law, call it what we want, but we know what's wrong. And this is very wrong from the get-go. I don't think, so far we've been told, there are no delays, there are no stopgaps, there are no hesitancies. I mean, when this is in progress, this moves and moves and moves. And I'm here to tell you, I can't accept that. I don't intend to do anything illegal about it, but we're not going away. When I say I speak for all my neighbors, whether they're in Leanne Drive or behind me or across the street in Broadmoor, Timber Birch. Our homes are our castles. I think you get that. And we've been invaded. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Go ahead,
The next
Dave.
person's coming,
Yep.
just so that all council members are aware, I'm sure you are, because we've had some discussions, but just so that you're of that frame of mind. What happens when someone's coming in to do this? There's rehab or reconstruction, which require construction code permits and things of that nature. Under DCA, what they do is the licensing aspect is taken away from the municipality. The construction code enforcement are permits for rehab or electrical, plumbing, anything that has to be done is taken away from the municipality. So in a sense, your construction office that knows what's happening in communities that are having permits issued or homes remodeled, whatever, is readily available here. But that's not the case in this situation because they instruct it, they take it away. If there's actually something going into your municipality, they'll send DCA in, actually retrieve the file and take everything out of the municipal hands. So it's another way that you don't know what's happening until the community brings it to your attention.
Can we have the department upstairs alert us if the DCA does remove a file?
Sure you can.
Can we instruct them?
Imagine.
Ken, if the DCA comes in and removes the file, will we know?
I can advise the construction official.
I want to know that.
But keep in mind also, in this situation, when someone is applying for a license, they're probably instructed that they will deal strictly with DCA, not with the community, for construction permits or everything. So they take total jurisdiction. It never even gets here.
That might be the case, but I find it completely offensive that the neighbors on Leanne Drive found out before we did and found out the way they did. And I think if we, intervene earlier on, it might at least soften the blow if we can't do anything else. I don't know.
Good evening. My name is Joe Richeza, and I live at 11 Leanne Drive and another representative of our community. And so far we've had 2 meetings. This is our 3rd meeting with the township. And when we explain something, the answers that we're getting back are not an answer. Now, Bob just mentioned R3 zoning. Can anyone there explain fully what R3 zoning is?
Ken, would you like, is that something you can answer? Sorry.
You probably know more about the statute than I, the administrative code than I do.
Well, he's talking about local.
I believe the R3, our R3 zoning in Gloucester Township.
Yes.
Only means it's 3 units per acre, 3 dwelling units per acre. So if you had a 10-acre piece of ground, you wanted to develop it, you could build 30 units on it by zoning. That's all R3 means. I believe this administrative code references R3 construction code, which is 2 different things, apples and oranges. That's the short version. Then there's lot frontages, lot sizes, lot depths, building coverages, lot coverages, setbacks. That's all part of R3, but the main point is it's 3 units per acre. That's what R4 is, 4 units per acre. R2 is 2, R1 is 1.
Gotcha.
The Uniform Construction Code talks about an R3, R5 that this is falling into. Their construction designations for the construction official as to what criteria has to be met, different than zoning criteria.
Thank you. Can anybody tell me what the R stands for?
R in Gloucester Township.
Yes.
Stands for residential. Residential 3.
Residential. So now we know what R3 is. We know that it's a residential residence. And yet they're allowed to put a business in there, a money-making business, and they're calling it R3, and they're telling us it's okay. Can anybody tell me why that's okay? Nobody could. And that's the stonewalling that we've been getting, and we're telling them that they don't belong there for that reason. Now, nobody has anything against rehabilitation for drug abuse. No one. We've had it on our own family and recovered and a part of society today, and it all worked. But to put a business in the middle of a residential community, and we're all agreeing that it is residential based on the R, just told what that is. A little bit more information about what that is a residential community, single-family housing. Doesn't say anything about you're allowed to put a business in. So, geez, I'm thinking about maybe starting a rabbit farm there. And I think there's probably a lot of people, Candy wants to start a pig farm, a chicken farm. We're not gonna come to you. We're just gonna do it. Because we already have the credentials for it being an R3. Now, that's a little sarcastic. You know we're not gonna do that. But I think you get the point. And I think that has to be explored more to, they don't belong there in a residential community, a business, a money-making business. That's one part of why I'm standing here. I thought that I hear you say that it has to be more than 1,000 feet from the residence to the school. Did anyone say that?
I didn't say that. I thought I
No.
heard that at the first or the second meeting.
Yeah.
So as a result of that comment, the township went out and did the measurement to ascertain what the measurement was so that we could provide it to the attorneys in their review process.
Correct, yeah. The mayor asked me to ask the engineer to go out and measure.
Okay. So they're legal with that. That has come back that they are,
There's no established requirement. I think what the mayor wanted to find out was just how close that particular building was to the entrance to the school.
And excuse me, what was that distance again, please?
Just over 900 feet.
From where to where?
Property corner to property corner.
Of their house
As the
number
crow
50?
flies.
That's from the 15 Leanne Drive.
As the crow flies, is what he said.
that's the crow flies. Can anybody help us with the R3 zoning? Meaning, we have an interpretation of what R3 is. Nobody is telling us a business is allowed to be there because they're entitled. They're just saying, well, it's okay because they're R3. Can anybody give me a direction to go to have that question more and look into it more and get back to us as a community as to what really that is and why is a business allowed in there under an R3 zoning? Can anybody do that?
Can I make a recommendation?
Sure.
Can we have the question, present the question to the attorneys who are investigating this, and then get that back to you?
Okay.
I think that's a better way of getting an answer to that. Otherwise, you're just gonna get answers from us, and none of us have done the research on that, nor are many of us equipped to do that research.
How can I get in touch with that attorney? Through the website or through a card that somebody has or?
Can you get the question to the clerk? And the clerk, you can just make sure that it gets to the attorney.
Joe, you can get them to me and I'll get them to you.
Okay, good. That answers that. The other thing that I have is a reference to the rules for DCA and the website that Dignity House is advertising, and I'd like to read that to you, and just piece by piece. So in reference to the Sober House at 15 Leanne Drive, I'd like to ensure that you are aware of certain information that's noted on Dignity Hall's website, which appears to be inconsistent with the requirements of a Class F license. It would be most appreciated if you would review this information and confirm whether or not a Class F license is still appropriate for Dignity Hall. The Class F license regulations indicate that there can be no provision of food, Class F license. No provision of food, laundry, financial, or other personal services provided by the license holder to the tenants. On the other hand, the website Dignity Homes indicates that they charge residents $60 a week to live in the house, but in many cases, they'll work with the residents for a period of time to provide scholarship rent while looking for employment. This provision of financial aid would appear to violate Class F license. That's one violation. The next part is the website also indicates as follows: room and board payments also help cover overhead, including staff, food, amenities, toiletries, activities the resident enjoys while at Dignity Hall. This again appears to be in violation of Class F license, which indicates that there can be no provision of food, laundry, financial, or other personal services from the license holder to the tenant. Another violation. Finally, the Class F license states that there can be no provision of on-site counseling, therapy, or clinical treatment on the premises. The Class F license says that. The website for Dignity Homes indicates that residents are responsible to comply with house rules, restrictions, and expectations. These include, but not limited to, daily attendance of a 12-step meeting, weekly relapse prevention meeting, weekly Big Book step study meeting, weekly house meetings, attendance at treatment. It is not clear whether these bold items are going to be done at the house or outside the facility. If they are done at the house, this appears to be another violation of the Class F license requiring which prohibits such on-site counseling and therapy. So, we'd appreciate an investigation into all of this because of the discrepancies between Dignity House and between the DCA.
Joe, can you give that to Nancy, please?
Certainly
Is that
will.
your only copy?
Certainly will. No, I have another copy.
Great.
Some of those things we've already discussed and looking into, and we don't have all the answers as yet. The explanations that we are receiving, to my knowledge, is that they're required to do that, but they don't do it on site. They have to do it off site. So none of those treatments or counseling are permitted to be on site. No food or all that stuff is provided. They can provide their own food, so they get that family unit definition in a sense. But none of it is provided by the owner of the business. Counseling is not provided by the owner of the business. Counseling they have to attend as part of their regulations that they qualify, but they take them off-site to facilities to do that. It's not done on-site.
Well, according to their website, they're advertising that they will provide food, toiletries, amenities, and even a scholarship. Now, that's got to be Dignity Hall that is coming up with the money to fund them while they're in-house. And it's against DCA rules to do that. So I'm just asking for an answer to all this and someone to help follow up with it. Let's get it straight.
Absolutely.
And let's get some movement on this. And let's straighten this mess out with DCA. I've already contacted DCA. They have a copy of this letter. I tried calling, couldn't get through twice. So it's like hitting your head up against a wall. And that's what we're all doing. We're hitting our head up against the wall because we're not getting answers that can go in our favor. All the answers we're getting is they're protected people. They can do this. Well, the R3 license is legal. Not legal. It's not legal. It's a business in a community, in a residential community. Why can't we stop that? Because there's nothing in the R3 that says you can run a business. Who can help us with that? We need somebody to step forward and come up with the answers on our behalf rather than on their behalf. How can we do that? That's a question for everybody.
We're trying.
Yeah.
We're trying, Joe. We are. We have people working on it right now to get that to us so that we can incorporate that into the analysis. You know, maybe you hit on something. Maybe you found something that they wouldn't have otherwise not found. So I think that sometimes the best arguments are going to come from those people that you wouldn't otherwise think are going to have those arguments. You know, so hopefully those arguments come from you and from our attorneys.
So you're pretty much telling us you're already working
Yes.
on all this stuff outside of this that I don't think this council even knew about. I don't think anybody knows about it.
They're going to look at it. It sounds like they suggested that they were looking at some of the things that you had mentioned, but I haven't been given a report that I can speak about right now, and that's what I'm looking for. So until I get that report, anything you have, get to Nancy so that we can get it to the attorneys, we get answers to those questions as well.
So we can expect an answer back
Absolutely.
from this.
I expect an answer back.
And is there any place that we can go for the R3 zone that can be a little more sympathetic to what we're saying versus what they're doing? Who else can we go to? Do we have to go to the legislator for that? Do we have to funnel it through DCA for that? Tell us where to go.
If I may, Dan, I know you're very active in this. When I did speak to the mayor today, he did tell me that our legislators are very much aware of what's happening. And Dave did ask them to please step in and also work on this with us. So it's very active. Dan's involved, Dave's involved, Tom is, and the mayor, and now our legislators. So it is very active. But as Dan said, if you could please provide the information so we can make sure it gets passed out to all of those active participants.
I'll be disappointed if the answers to the questions that you've asked are not in that analysis by our attorneys. Very disappointed. I would not find that satisfactory.
Okay, so when would we expect these answers? Do we get the answers back as you get them, or are you going to do a final analysis and give us the whole report back as to what you found and what's good, not good, what's going to work and what's not going to work? How's that going to work?
I don't know how it will be disseminated. I mean, it's kind of like happening very fast. I imagine as we know stuff, we could reach out to Candy. I just don't want to give it dribble drabble, but I also don't know cold information that you guys need. So, you'll probably know contemporaneously with when we know it. And then we should have another meeting where the focus of that meeting is on this topic.
So I did visit, right next to the township,
Yes.
So as of Thursday, when you said that we have their support, that really wasn't the message that I received when I visited them in person. I didn't speak to them directly, but the gentleman that I spoke to, when I mentioned going out to all of the municipalities, he said, really, you're gonna go out to all 500? And I said, if that's what it takes. So if something has changed from Thursday morning to today, I'm surprised by that, but feeling a glimmer of hope. And then, Joe, if you send me those questions, I'll get them. And is there anybody else that would like to get up to speak? Okay. Thanks, Joe.
Okay.
Joe, it's fine.
Okay, in a minute.
Thanks, Kate.
Okay, so I understand that the attorney is currently working on everything. He's going to have all the answers to everything, whether positive, negative, whatever those answers are. And we're going to get that full report from him.
I would expect
And-
you should get. Dave, am I okay in saying that? I mean, if I were a homeowner, I'd want that report.
I'm not sure, I've had just one conversation with the Archer office as to what their focus is. Naturally, if it's starting some type of legal action, then they're going to hold back on some information that remains confidential as it goes forward. But as general information comes in, I don't see why we cannot get that information out.
Okay, you
Joe, yes,
You want
please
to
bring
speak
it up to the clerk.
So if an answer comes out and it doesn't look like it's gonna be positive to our cause, maybe we don't wanna release that if that's gonna be an argument in litigation or something. Because then they could just turn around at some point and say, hey, you even said it wasn't a good argument, so why should we treat it as anything but a bad argument? So sometimes when you disseminate information, you gotta be careful.
Hi.
My name is Carol Schultz. I live at 19 Leanne Drive. And I just wanted to point out my thought on this being a medical facility. So the DCA has deemed it not a medical facility, but truly it's a continuation of their rehabilitation. It's paid for by insurance a lot of times. So I just wanted to point that out, that I think it's a medical facility, even though they're saying that it's not. So like Bob said, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, It's a duck.
Thank you, Karen. Anybody else for the public portion? Go ahead.
The whole of Leon Drive is.
Yeah, so just a quick question, so.
If you could just state your name, please.
Yeah, my name's Kathy Pogozowski.
I'm sorry.
Kathy Pogozowski.
Okay, thank
I
you.
live at 13 Leanne Drive. I just want to ask real quick, you guys were gonna look into the building permits? It's just secondary, it's like low level. We're trying to get whatever time. We're like talking about time of the essence. This is it. You know, we've got literally weeks. So we're looking for any stopgaps we can get. So another thing was these people, when they bought the house, it had 2 bathrooms, and now it has 2.5 baths. I'm pretty sure bathrooms, according to your own building permit stuff, is something required to permit. The windows, same thing, because they have to go under the standards for sober living. They had to be lowered. Who's looked at the permits since last week? Anybody?
No one from here, because everything's under the control of DCA. So normally those permits and inspections would come from our code office and officials, but they have no jurisdiction. And I spoke to a certain extent with Mr. Raywood on that, and he indicated, you know, as I was reading through the regulations, they required the home had crank out windows. Well, that doesn't meet the standard of an ingress egress in the state of emergency. That's why all those windows have to be changed. So when I spoke to our code official, he said, well, that's a classic thing that they would be involved in and permitting those and inspecting those if they're done properly. But they have none of that information in the township's construction office because everything is being supervised and controlled by DCA.
Well, somebody went out there and inspected the building and said it didn't need it. How do you put new windows in, and how do you put a new half bath in without having permits?
Well, they do, but they're issued through DCA direct, not issued through local.
Are you guys not like, excuse my, pissed off that these guys are just like usurping everything in your township?
Well, I think it is an affront. I think everyone gets a surprise.
Yeah.
It's our community, but you take everything away from us, and it goes back to what is transparent and what is not transparent.
And then there's like, so all your zoning, I've gone out and read, well, there's pages and pages and pages, but I mean, the zoning for like to have a daycare next door, that's a conditional use. And it has to be approved by the zoning board. So that's all gone away. Your whole zoning thing about what can be permitted on R3 is up at the DCA.
Regulated by DCA.
But the DCA said that they have to.
Living residence is controlled strictly by DCA, that division, which is under Mr. Raywood.
Right, and then, but Mr. Raywood, is that the guy who's been saying that, right? And he wrote back just last week, it says they are governed by local zoning and ordinances.
Well, it's because he knows there is nothing that prohibits it, because none of the towns in New Jersey were aware that they were passing this type of administrative regulation to permit it. That's how I can answer it. Because I'm sure if
which one is it?
municipalities
I mean,
were aware of this, there would be more regulations in the various towns.
Right.
Currently, there are none.
How interesting. I'm telling you. I hope this doesn't happen to anybody up on this board. I'm telling you, to have this happen is just, what else is there? Yeah, so, all right, so like every little question I was gonna ask you, plus I have like 9,000 more about like, cars at the property. I mean, so according to them, they're gonna have two on this, they can have two on Mr. Solomon, who owns Dignity Hall, Bay, whatever, he says there are gonna be 2 in the driveway and 2 out front. 10 residents and an employee. Where are the other cars going? Where are they going? I mean, it seems like a stupid, basic question, but not when you have this sober living house coming next. And they can have people come visit them. So that's more cars on the street. There are a myriad of things that I'm hoping Archer Griner, I know the law firm. So, I'm hoping these guys are like digging deep because
there's a maximum of 10 residents under the DCA regulations. but it regulates one resident per 100 square foot of sleeping area.
Correct.
So if there's 4 bedrooms, and I think there's an expansion they did, they gave them a couple extra bedrooms. So if they have 5 bedrooms, that's 5 residents. If they're like 10 by 10, depending on the size, they have 6, then 6 residents. They're only allowed residents, 1 for each 100 square foot of sleeping area.
It's, I don't know, I mean, there's so many guidelines for this business that's going on in next to us. There's no guidelines for us. It's all been taken from you. But, everybody's jumping through hoops for the business that's going in the middle of the residential community.
Well, I don't think we are, we're trying to work with.
Oh, I'm not pointing fingers at you. I'm
Okay.
saying as a township, everything that you guys have done to govern and to ensure that Gloucester Township adheres to, is protected by, just got wiped off the map and is up in Trenton. And we as taxpayers, the people, you work for us, which is true, you're like a kingdom without a castle. And now we all have our castles, to use your point, to Bob's point. We just got thrown down into the valley. Everything we work for in our lives is now gone. Values, everything, property, no one's even talked about property values. It's the lowest thing on the totem pole, because that's not what this is about. But there are people out here who are seriously concerned about who do we see for that? Who do we see when our property value drops $100,000? Is that coming from Trenton? Doubt it.
The property value question or point is really interesting, because if this is a business that's coming into your neighborhood, and let's say it stays there, there's many different ways to value real estate, one of which is the income method. And I would argue if they're charging what I've heard in this audience, then the real estate taxes for that type of property seem to be a lot more than they would be in a residential situation where you guys are not earning rent. So I'm curious as to how profitable this type of business can be if the taxes are commensurate with the income that they're earning on the property.
Can that be a question of, can that be a question of what taxes are going to be paid on that property?
That's one of the questions I've been talking about.
Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else on the public portion? Seeing none, we'll close the second public portion. Polling of directors.
Mr. Groninger,
Nothing else to report.
Mr. Curtis,
Nothing to report.
Mr. Lechner,
I have nothing to add, thank you.
Chief Harkins.
I only just want to introduce to council our new Class 2 Special Officer, Brian Robinson, who should be, one of his duties is working the municipal council meetings, so you'll be seeing him. Brian he was retired full-time as a lieutenant in the Cherry Hill Police Department, and he's a resident of Gloucester Township, and also worked previously the last 5 years for the Camden County Sheriff's Department. So you'll be seeing him, so I just want to acknowledge him.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Chavo,
Nothing to report, thanks.
Mr. Hutchison.
Sometimes it's not safe to speak on behalf of the other members of council. I'm going to risk it tonight. This Leanne Drive situation is deeply concerning to everybody up here. It's bothered me every single day since I've heard about it. It's an attack on home ownership, something that I value tremendously. I've gotten into it with other people in this room about topics which are related, the use of government powers to do certain things with somebody's property. And I'm very sensitive to that. We're going to do whatever we can do. I don't know what that's going to be, but I'm not satisfied that we know what it's going to be right now. And we're just going to push hard. And, I think this is a township problem. This is not Leanne Drive. So the resources of this town have to be brought to bear on this topic. we have to do whatever we can to help you. And I truly believe that, and I truly believe everybody up here believes that.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Mr. Owens?
Thanks for coming out tonight, and I concur with everything that Councilman Hutchinson said. We're all in agreement, and we thank all of you for keep coming out to the meetings, and I hope you keep coming out and raising this and pushing it out to all of your channels throughout all the media. That's the only way this can change. Chief, thanks for everything you do as always, and the men and women of the police department and all of our first responders for keeping us safe every day. Thank you.
Mrs. Stubbs?
I'd just like to say, I so admire your resolve and your love for your community. And I believe this is a state problem. I believe there's 560 municipalities who are all realizing that transparency wasn't there. And before we knew it, we didn't have power to do certain things to support our constituents. I spoke to Candy the last meeting. It's about the process. And I hope that in your dealings beyond this township, that you find other communities or neighborhoods that are in a similar situation. You find a way to connect and take that to legislation. Because that's the only way a process changes, is when you have people come together and say, this is unacceptable. So this goes beyond Gloucester Township. And believe me, there are other communities and other communities and other townships that are dealing with this very same thing. May not have the resolve that you have. So maybe you're going to be that kickstart to draw those people somehow together and say, listen, Trenton can't just talk to us. Sometimes we have to talk to Trenton.
How do you do that? How do you do that?
Again, I'm just saying, I'm hoping that in speaking with others, that you bring together a group of find other people who are in the same situation, that somehow you're able to do that and come together and go to your legislators, go to your assemblymen, have those people do the same thing. I mean, the only way to bring about change is to have your voice heard. And it's important, again, that you come together as a group, and not just Gloucester Township. Again, as I spoke to you, I hope you're out to change the process, not just solve your problem. That way you have others who come together and also work in that same direction. So, we're supporting you the best that we can with the limited powers that we have. I hope you recognize that. And I appreciate that that we're a resource. While we can't handle it, we are a resource. And this is what we've heard from you. And I fully appreciate that you understand our situation. So good luck. Let's keep pushing. And thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mrs. Winters?
I just want to thank everyone for coming out, and we are listening, and like Dan said, he did speak for us, and I think we all agree at this time that, we do support you guys, and we want to see what we can help.
Thank you. Mr. Meunier?
Thank you all for coming out. Candy, Joe, Bob, Carol, Kathy, thank you for your questions. And Kathy, you were saying the stupid question about where the car's going to park. There are no stupid questions in this matter. So keep bringing the questions. I'm learning something every night, every day. So please keep coming, keep bringing the questions. Let us all learn also and fight this fight with you. Another part, I want to say congratulations to Timber Creek boys basketball team. They won the Group 3 championship tonight against Jericho West.
We're West Warriors.
We were at the game.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Our son is the head football coach there at West, so we have to support West.
You guys won baseball this year, so you know what? You everybody loves basketball.
All right. Mrs. Trotter?
Thank you all. Thank you to my colleagues this evening. I think, Dan, thank you so much for all of your insight this evening. And I think you and everybody here spoke so eloquently on what, and I think can easily speak for all of us on what you all are going through. I was not at the meeting last week. I was away, and Orlando and the mayor and others have brought me up to speed. And thank you for coming out. Thank you for being so attentive to what is happening in your neighborhood and bringing it to our attention. I have learned so much in the last week that I was not aware of. I personally am affected also by drug addiction with family living and sober living. And I never knew the backstory. To me, I call it the backstory of all the rules and what happens within a neighborhood and what goes about. So thank you for sharing that information. And I can say with all honesty, after talking to the mayor and council president and my colleagues, we are doing everything that we can, and we are listening and trying to work with the information presented to find ways to make this work or not work, whatever the outcome is. But thank you all for coming out. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. One last, Women Who Make a Difference. The ceremony will be the end of March. I've lost the date now because I've been listening so attentively and writing notes, but I think March 23rd. Sorry, I'm not as good as Orlando here on that. March 23rd, we'll have the Women Who Make a Difference ceremony. So I think we're still accepting applications on our website if you'd like to nominate somebody. Yeah. With that being said, I'll now close the meeting. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Meeting is what? Okay. Oh, all in favor? Meeting is closed. Thank you.
How are you? Congratulations. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Good luck with everything.
Thank you very much.
Hi, sir. Back to our